those of us who have been around the block a time or three, some things that just always appeal to us, it's almost a universal. When you hear the word cute, do you think of this next picture? What's cuter than a basket full of golden retriever puppies? Especially the one in the middle on the bottom with his tongue sticking out. They just epitomize everything that's cute. For now. Then they grow up. And like the kids in the children's message this morning, they grow and they change and they become dogs and they have accidents and they steal your heart anyway. But they change. Let me ask you, most of us in this congregation this morning are beyond our 20s, beyond our 30s, beyond our 40s. Someone said, keep going. When was the last time you used the phrase, I remember when? Usually that phrase is followed by a very positive memory. And the positive memory is shared in contrast with what's going on right now, which is usually a mess. In chapter 29 of Job, we're reaching the end of the book, and at this point, this is his next to last word. His last word comes after he has an encounter with God. But for now, he's remembering. I remember when. And the list of things that he longs for. The one phrase that stood out to me in this entire section was the phrase, oh, for the days when I was in my prime. Does anybody here identify with that phrase? In Job's time, as someone got older, they earned respect, their wisdom became trusted, and age was a positive thing. In Job's time, and as he describes it here, being in his prime not only means his physical prime, but the days when the Lord protected and guided him, when God's intimate friendship blessed his home and his family was with him. Back in the days when he was this prime example of a godly man. And the Lord blessed him. And he sensed God's presence. And he knew that things between him and the Lord were good because his life was good. As he continues in this 29th chapter, he describes the fact that he was respected. When he came into town and took his seat in the city gate, the young men closed their mouths. I don't want to sound like an idiot in front of this man. Even his peers would stand in respect. Job was a respected man. Job fully expected at that point in his life that he would live a long, full, rich life. And when the time came for him to die, he would die in his own bed, surrounded by his family, and make that transition peacefully. That's what he expected. I want to make a side note there. Death is still an enemy. And for the Christian, it's an enemy that's been defeated. And we need not fear it. But our culture tells us that the worst thing that could happen to you is to die. And some of that thinking has bled itself into the church, and we still don't talk about our own dying. very comfortably. When the time comes, I'll deal with that. But the time doesn't seem to come because we got too much living to do. There was a time when the role of the pastor was to prepare people for a good death. It's something that needs to be a part of our thinking. Not that we become morbidly fascinated with death, but that we recognize it as a very normal part of the life we live and prepare for it. Job was respected. Job expected to die from a rich, full life. And at the end of that chapter, Job was trusted. People knew that when they went to him, he would open his mouth, and whatever came out was something that made sense, would be helpful to them, would be even encouraging to them. He was just that kind of man. He wanted so much in this 29th chapter to be back at that time, because now his life is an absolute disaster. There's another phrase that we often use that we find it more difficult to experience. Have you ever said to yourself, I'll be glad when things get back to normal? It's been a year now since Janice broke her cheekbone, and in that time, she has become a very accurate weather forecaster. Some of you understand. Right where the break was is where if there's a change in air pressure of any kind, a storm is coming, anything is happening, she'll feel it there. She would really love to be back to normal and not have that happen, but the fact is this has become the new normal. And those of us who have been around the block a few times will long for the days when it was normal, but now we recognize we're not going back there. There's a new normal. Unless I do something that is probably more money than I want to spend, I'm going to be bald. That is my new normal. Now, yes, there are steps I can take. I'm not sure it's worth it, or I would have done it by this time. But there are others of us for whom the new normal is much more difficult and painful. The divorce, the death, the illness that leaves its mark. It's difficult to adjust to something like that and call it normal because we still long for the way it used to be. But now, with age comes not only physical suffering, but those horrible, horrible feelings of uselessness. Can't do what I used to. And even worse, of being forgotten. Why haven't the kids called? Job is experiencing those emotions right now. He is feeling absolutely useless. The people he used to advise, they don't come to him anymore. As a matter of fact, he says, the sons of men who were considered worthless in town, those sons are now making fun of me because of how my life has changed. I feel useless. I can't do any of the things I used to do. Even the friends who used to respect and come around don't come around anymore. They can't stand his smell. They can't stand to look at him. He feels forgotten. I want to be careful how I say this. One of the things our culture has done and has been doing for a long time is to glorify youth, one of my least favorite anti-aging cream commercials shows a conveyor belt with containers of anti-aging cream, and they're dropping off. And the voiceover says, "There it goes, one more anti-aging cream in no hurry to do its work." I need to be young, and I need to be young now, because that's what life is about. It's the message that it keeps coming to us and coming to us and coming to us, so that by the time you have earned the gray hairs that signify you as someone who is experienced and can be trusted, it is a sign that you've had far too much stress in your life, mainly from the kids. How many of us can say, "I'm proud of this shock of gray or white hair"? Some of us understand that it means, I've been there, I've done that, and I've earned this, and I can be trusted. But far too many of the commercials that we hear and ads that we see in other places keep telling us, get rid of that gray. Get rid of those wrinkles. And for heaven's sake, don't act your age. In verse 15, some of the things that Job is afraid of. In chapter 30 and verse 15, terrors overwhelm me. He is so physically broken, and loss of everything has gotten to the point that he's just scared to death. My dignity is driven away as by the wind. You know, when you go to a wedding reception, and there are invariably one or two couples who get on the dance floor and they act like they know what they're doing. And the rest of us just kind of trying very hard. But they've lent a measure of dignity to that dance floor. That was how Job once felt. He was a person of dignity. He doesn't feel that way anymore. It's been taken from him. The feeling that so many folks who are physically disabled, people in nursing homes and other places, who just don't feel as if the dignity is there anymore. My safety vanishes like a cloud. Any security he might have sensed when he was in his prime is gone. These issues that are so much a part of aging, and Job is saying, I wish I was in my prime again. And the reality is, you can't go back. But in spite of the fact that you are no longer the person that you once were, you have never been this age before. And at this point in your life, you really do have the choice to look back and long for those days when you could do the things you did then. Or you can come into the presence of a Father who loves you and say, okay, Lord, what do you have in mind for me now? I can't do what I used to. But you've brought me through all this for some reason, and I'm here in this place at this time with these people for a reason. Please show me what it is. And the fact is, life is no longer what it once was. At Brandon Hetrick's funeral, I pulled out I don't have a smartphone. I have one of these very, very old-fashioned slide phones. They don't make these anymore. And this for me was contemporary technology. My daughter reminds us this is an antique now. Life is not what it was. But the fact is, the people around you need you right now the way you are. When you're willing to say, it's not what it was, and neither am I, but I'm here and I'm now and I'm prepared to be with the people around me in the way God would have me be now. The danger is in aching for the past and trying to live there and simply enduring the present until the day the Lord calls me home. The Lord uses all these changes that take place in our lives to become all He has in mind to prepare us for a life with Him. I'm grateful for the fact that most of you, well, none of you here, knew me when I was in high school because I was insufferable. Ask my sisters, ask my mom. God has been doing a work to bring me here at this time with all of you. And He's done the very same work in all of you to bring you here at this time with these people. What does He want to do with you now that He could not have done with you 10 years ago or 5 years ago? Let's pray.